Hello, and welcome back to Becoming. I am your host, Benjamin Potter. Today on Becoming, I am delighted to welcome Dr. Paul Browning to the show. Paul began his career as a primary teacher in kindergarten and then spent over 25 years as a school principal. His passions are leadership, organizational culture, and creativity. He believes that trust is the fundamental resource for successful leadership, and a healthy organizational culture and creativity is the future of education. Paul has spoken at numerous conferences, both nationally and internationally, and led workshops on leadership, teacher improvement, school culture, and improvement to well in excess of 4,000 school leaders and CEOs across several continents. He is also the author of 2 books, Compelling Leadership, The Importance of Trust and How to Get It, and Principled, 10 Leadership Practices for Building Trust. Paul has been listed among the top 50 most influential people in education in Australia, awarded Australia's best non-government school principal, and awarded an Order of Australia Medal for Services to Education. Paul is currently the Managing Director of Vivedus, a learning activation model revolutionizing education by unlocking students' higher order thinking. In collaboration with the University of Melbourne, Vivedus provides schools with an AI-powered SaaS-based framework, integrating pedagogy, assessment tools, and teaching strategies. As the only learning activation model with a digital AI-enabled platform, it empowers educators to teach and assess creative intelligence while giving school leaders real-time insights into teaching quality. Additionally, it streamlines workflows, significantly reducing teacher workload. Welcome, Paul, to the show.
Thank you, Benjamin. Really looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time. To begin, the first question I always ask my guests is, could you please tell us what your first middle leadership role was, and maybe the school, the context, and a bit about what it was like getting that position?
A bit of background, Benjamin. I was trained as a primary teacher, so I started my career in a primary school. It was quite a small independent primary school in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, near Bowral, called Gibgate. And I actually started my career teaching kindergarten, which is prep in Queensland. So 5-year-olds, 28 5-year-olds. I tell you what, baptism of fire. That's one way of actually introducing you to education is to give you 28 5-year-olds and see how you go. So I think I was drinking 9 cups of coffee a day to begin with, just to survive. My first day, I remember, essentially I'd run out of all the activities I'd planned by 11 o'clock and then thought to myself, what am I going to do the rest of the day? But the school was quite a small school, and it didn't have any middle leadership positions. So it just had, it's because there was only one grade level per, one class per grade level. But I saw a need for a position of early childhood coordinator, which was looking after the preschool, kindergarten, year 1 and year 2, to coordinate what was actually going on in those areas, because we just opened a preschool as well. So how could we actually coordinate what was happening in the preschool with the transition into kindergarten and then year 1 and year 2? So I went to the boss and I pitched an idea for this position, and I said to him, I think I'm your man. And graciously he said, yeah, okay, give it a go. So that was,
How many years had you been a teacher before you pitched that idea?
Look, not many. I can't remember. It's probably 5. I went into teaching because I just love working with kids. But very quickly got bored with just teaching, which is a terrible thing to say as well. But I think probably early on could see how things could be better. So I've got a good ability to actually identify problems and then see how it could actually be better for everybody, and then pitch a solution for improving it. So, any advice for middle leaders, Ben, who are listening, or Benjamin, sorry, is leadership is actually about change. It's about growing something. It's about making it better. It's about having a vision for what it could be like. It's not about managing the status quo. So lots of us are great managers, but we're not great leaders. Great leaders can identify an opportunity or a problem, or can see something that is really going to be fantastic if we just did this. So great middle leaders are ones who say, actually, there's a problem here and I know how I could make it better, and pitch that to your senior leadership team or your principal
Yeah.
and give it a go. So you'd be surprised if you actually had the courage to do that. Most principals go, yeah, right, that'd be great if you could. Thank you. So go
Yeah.
for it.
That you're quite an innovative person. I think, knowing what you're doing with Vividus and knowing how your career and reading about it, you've always been someone who I suppose has been a change maker, if we can use that terminology. How did you develop that? Was that just like a personality trait that you had that, like you said, you saw a need and you wanted to fix it? And I guess for some middle leaders, we can at times go, oh, I see a need, or I can see something that maybe needs to be changed here. Because I'm sure you've been on the other end of it, receiving it as a principal, people coming to you with ideas. Is there a way that you think is best to like produce that idea, to show that forward? If you come to with an idea in hand and say, hey, this is what I think we should do, is there a right way to go about doing that in a way that senior leadership is going to be more open to?
There's kind of a lot in your question there, Ben.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. If I can go back a couple of steps.
Yeah.
I've studied leadership and I've practiced leadership for a long time. And one of the questions in my mind has always been, are you born a leader or can you develop skill?
Mm.
And I think it's probably the answer lies in there's a bit of each. I think some people are born natural leaders. Others have to work harder at it. And it's probably not unlike any sport. Regardless of whether you've got a natural ability, you've actually got to work hard to be the best in your sport. So you've actually got to practice and get better at it. So it's a combination of your born ability and your determination to practice and get better in terms of leadership. And as I said, there is a difference between leadership and management. Leadership, my belief, and you can read a lot about it as well in the literature and the research, is about having a vision as well and taking people on the journey to achieve that vision. Seeing a problem, seeing an opportunity, seeing what could be. I think I've probably been born with leadership abilities, but then also I've had to really work hard at developing those skills and getting better at them. In terms of innovative thinking, problem solving, or identifying problems, a lot of people have said to me, Paul, you're a bit unique. Do you realize that? Which I find a bit weird because I kind of think, no, I'm not. Surely I'm not. Surely people can see this problem as well. Like, surely they can see it. And a lot of people can see the problem, but then they don't go the next step and say, actually, we can solve this. So it takes a lot of courage, a lot of determination, but also the ability to think through the problem and coming up with a solution too. So I liken the image to to a metaphor, I guess. If you're hunting for a new home, and a lot of people will drive past a really run-down property, and all they'll see is a run-down property and bypass it, go past it. Whereas somebody who can see potential will snap it up and then turn it into something remarkable. So do you have that capacity to see something and then turn it into something remarkable, something better than what it currently is? So look and see, as I would say. Look, ask questions. So for middle leaders, the first point would be to ask the team you're leading, what do you love? What do you hate, or what's problematic? Or where do you see the issues and the frictions? Like, listen, ask your staff what could be better, because it's got to come from them as well as you. You might see a problem, and alternatively, you might frame your questions, and this sounds terrible, to elicit the responses that you need to confirm, I guess, your thinking. Now, I see this problem. What do you think about it? Is it a problem for you? And yes, it is a problem for me. Great. There's an impetus then to solve it. And then if you're wanting to pitch an idea to the principal, I would say be succinct. I'm mentoring somebody in a middle leadership position in a big school in Victoria at the moment, and she's wanting to go for a senior position. And I suggested to her, well, you've got to demonstrate to your new principal that you're a problem solver, you're a doer. So go to them with an idea, but be succinct in that idea. So if you've got a problem and you can see how it can be better, be really succinct in what that problem is, and then really succinct in how you're going to solve it, and then offer yourself as that solution. To begin with, she could see all these problems because she was in charge of quite a big portfolio. confuse me. Like, you're not going to change the world in a day, but you can fix this. So if you're a middle leader and you're leading a department or a team of people, and you can see that an aspect of communication or an aspect of how you gather data, or whether it's how you manage assessment, and you can see how it could be better, go with a succinct idea. This is the problem I'm seeing. Can I solve it, pilot the solution, and then come back with the results? Because you might want to expand that solution across the school, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as I said, you'd be surprised when you ask senior leaders, unless they're narcissistic, or more than likely they'll say, yeah. If they're narcissistic, then the trick is to make them think it was their idea. And smooth up their ego all the time. So,
okay. Good advice.
Yeah.
You said something that I think is really interesting, often for people who are in that middle stage of developing their leadership, either an aspiring leader or in middle leadership. You talked about, to use your sport metaphor, you still got to work hard at the skills.
Yeah.
And I think with a lot of sports, they're quite definable skills. For instance, AFL, you work on your hand passing, you work on your kicking, your tackling, those sort of things. But then I think often with teaching, and I'm sure you've discovered this across your career, when it comes to leadership in a school context, people have such a broad idea of what is a good leader in schools. And, people are making careers out of, this is what a good leader is. This is how you be a good leader. And there's so many different things. People talk about courage, ethics and all those sort of things. How, you talked about working hard on some skills that you had to develop. Are there some practical things for middle leaders and aspiring leaders? Because I think, I talk to some aspiring leaders and they go, I don't know what to work on, because sometimes maybe feedback I get is vague, or people say, you got to develop your leadership skills. And they're like, well, but then I Google leadership skills and it's 100 things. Are there some few things that you would recommend?
Benjamin, and that's a really important question, because often when people are asked to describe the leader they admire, they might say they're really honest, or they're a person of integrity, or they've got great courage. And as you say, how do you get more courageous? How do you become a person of greater integrity? Like, how do you practice that skill? What does it actually look like? Unlike hand passing, you pass the ball and you got to practice that skill.
Yeah.
It's a very practical and definable skill. A couple of points I'd make before I talk about some of the skills, though. I would say for all leaders, it's a relational thing. So it's all about relationships and building relationships. So start there with that in your mind. It's about building those relationships. It's not about being liked. So it's not about winning friends and influencing people. It's actually about being a leader. And everyone you lead has a different expectation of you. So they all expect different things from you and what you like. So I would say, be real, be who you are. So lead as you are, Benjamin. So, and the beginning of leadership is really knowing and understanding who you are. Like, who is Benjamin? What does he value? What does he believe about education? What does he believe about, or what's his worldview? So you've really got to understand who you are, what you believe, what the beliefs are, what your values are when it comes to the context of education, and lead from that perspective. If those values are in conflict with your organisation that you work for, then it's probably time to find another organisation, because you'll never be authentic.
Yeah.
So in that context, or you could be authentic but be in opposition with the organisation.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not, but something you need to decide. Coming to the practical skills then, that was probably the main cause for my research around building trust. So when my first principalship was a great opportunity to grow my skills, because I grew with the school. I founded an Anglican school, but then I moved to a well-established school. And one of the things I discovered early on was it was missing trust in the organisation. There was an absence of trust and an air of distrust. So I wanted to know, how could I reestablish trust in the leadership and in the culture of the organisation? So that's where I did the PhD and uncovered 10 practical skills that you can get better at. So one of them being visible. So, and I had a coffee with somebody this morning who works for a school as a consultant and goes into the school and said, I never ever see the principal. I never see them.
Mm.
So, and being visible is something you had to work hard at. Now, knowing that being visible built trust meant that I spent most of my day out of the office, visiting classrooms or doing playground duties or, going to assemblies, or you're just being near and present with people. So it was something I had to practice and get better at. Uh, a skill that I'm not particularly good at, which that research showed, is providing affirmation. So thanking people for the contribution they made. Now, that's not something that I'm particularly good at, and I have to put in the concerted effort and work harder at that. How do I, and think carefully and set myself some rules, like I need to thank at least 5 people each day for what they've done, and be very specific in what I'm thanking them for. So I had to work really hard at that. So my work uncovered 10 practices that build a culture of trust, which are leadership practices. Being visible, acknowledging people are 2 of those practices. Then I built a rubric so people can assess where they fall on those practices, or more importantly, they can get the feedback from their team.
Yeah.
And these are practices that any leader in any context should be getting better at. So a teacher in a classroom is a leader of young people because they're actually causing change. They're teaching young kids and taking them from where they are at the beginning of the year through their course to where they should be at the end of the year. If you're a parent, you're leading your family. If you're a soccer coach, you're leading the team. If you're a middle leader, all of us are leading at some point in our lives. And so these practices are just as pertinent for the principal as they are for everybody. So getting feedback from people about where you sit against those 10 practices really helps you identify, okay, my team has said to me I'm pretty useless at listening. I need to get better at it. And that's a skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm interested, you brought up trust, which is something that I know is big. As you said, you did your PhD in it. And it's something that I'm interested to ask you some more questions about. Was that something that you only really maybe discovered when you took that principal's job?
Yes.
Or was it something that you said it wasn't something that had developed maybe during your previous roles?
No, it was something I only realized when I moved to school. So, trust is a really interesting thing. And the first comment I make about trust is that you can't actually define what trust is because it's a socially constructed phenomenon. It only exists when people come together in community. And so because each of us have our own life experiences and stories to tell, we will define trust through the lens of those stories. So, for example, if you've gone through a terrible divorce and you've been betrayed by your spouse, you'll describe what trust is through that lens. I haven't been through that experience, but I've been through other experiences. So my definition or my understanding of what trust is will be described through the lens of my experiences. So you can't have an agreed definition. It's a socially constructed phenomenon. And that's like with leadership. Leadership only exists when we come together in relationship. It's a socially constructed phenomenon. So when you Google skills for leadership, that's why you get 30,000 definitions of all these skills because there's no agreed definition for it. Now, trust is something too that we don't really pay attention to until we're missing it. So it's a bit like air. Like we enjoy the clean, fresh air and only notice that air when it's fouled, when it's polluted. And it's like that with trust. We enjoy trust in our relationships, but as soon as it's gone, then that's when we notice it. So at Bergman, when I started Bergman, it was a great privilege to establish the culture. When I came to, there was something really, really odd about the place. And the history had created this culture of distrust. And as I listened to staff, I worked it out that it's actually an absence of trust here that's causing the problem. So the question for me is, how do I reestablish that? And the outcome of the research, I would argue, is the number one job of any leader is, first of all, to build trust and then to set a vision.
Yeah.
Because your job is to take a team of people on a journey to achieve that vision. And they're not going to come with you on that journey unless they trust you to get there and they believe in that vision. So the first thing, and Thomas Giovanni, an academic researcher in the States who's since passed away, said essentially it's vital to build trust before you do anything, even before you begin developing a strategy. So it's the number one thing that leaders need to do is to build trust. Not just in them, but trust in the organization. So people will work together to achieve the extraordinary, to put in the extra effort to solve the complex problems, to make it better than what it currently is.
Yeah. So when you stepped into that first role and you sort of said to your principal, hey, I think we need this role, and then you've obviously stepped in and done it, did you, because you were stepping up and you, I don't know, for some teachers may have been teaching for longer than you, and suddenly you're 5 years in and you're saying, hey, I've now got this role.
Yeah, a bit rude and cheeky of me, isn't it? But anyway.
Yeah. Just coming in and going, by the way, this is a role I'm creating for myself.
Yeah.
How did you build that trust? Like, I know you said you probably were conscious of it at that point in time, but how does a middle leader, do you think, build trust, especially when they step up within their own organization? Because if you've come from sitting amongst people in the staff room and then you go into leadership, from different people I've spoken to, they say that's often some of the hardest transitions.
Yeah, it is.
It is. And so if you could share why, maybe two, again, I'm asking you multiple questions at a time. Why is that difficult? But then two, what would you encourage middle leaders who have done that, how they establish trust with their colleagues?
I think probably, I'm a very forward person. My wife would tell me that, you didn't ask that question, did you, Paul? Did you really say that? Yeah, I did. So what's wrong with that? What's the problem? I don't understand. Why wouldn't you say that? So I am very forward in a sense. I have a filter, so I know when to filter it.
Yeah.
But I guess probably I've also got a personality that enables me to say things in a way that it comes across that I'm not being judgmental. I'm actually wanting to be supportive. I want you to be better, Benjamin. I want this place to be better. So the motivation of why I'm saying something is not about me getting the position of early childhood coordinator. It's more about me helping solve a problem to make it better for all of these teachers and these kids and these families. So the motivation for what you're wanting to do is not about my own self-promotion. It's coming from that heart of wanting to serve.
Yeah.
So really, I guess for middle leaders is again, questioning yourself, why are you doing something? Is it about your own goal? And so my drive to become a principal was not so much because I wanted the pay package. It's because I could see that I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to broaden my impact and I wanted to serve a bigger community. So, and I knew I could actually do it. So, I still had to work really hard, and I still felt a fraud every day, but my motivation was that I wanted to give. So, when you step up in middle leadership and before you go to the principal and you're putting yourself forward, test your own motivation first. In terms of middle leaders, as a principal looking at middle leaders, if a middle leader came to me with an idea, by and large, I'd say, yes, go for it, as long as it aligned with the school's strategic direction. So if you do pitch an idea, try and align what you're doing with where the principal is wanting to take the school. So you're seen there as a supportive person wanting to actually make things better on the ground. And in a sense, what you're doing is you're saying to the principal, notice me, I'm a capable leader. Because if you don't put yourself forward in those senses, then the principal's never going to notice you, particularly in a big school. So you don't notice, who's doing some great work at the school? Oh, Benjamin is, because he's doing this. It's really amazing. But I don't know what Cheryl's doing because you never heard anything from her department. Like, I don't know, must be doing a good job because I don't get any complaints.
Yeah.
Benjamin, on the other hand, he came to me with this cracking idea. So it's not about self-promotion. It's about making it better. It's aligning with what its direction is, and it's making I'll put you on the radar of a principal. Stepping into middle leadership, your other part of the question there, from within the school is really, really challenging. And that comes down to the fact that a lot of people are not able to differentiate between the professional and the personal. So when you become a teacher, you go into a school, you work with a bunch of colleagues, you tend to gravitate to people you like, and you form friendships. Let's go for a beer on Friday afternoon after school. Yeah, no worries. That'd be great. Love to. Hey, do you want to come around with your family on the weekend and have a barbecue? Love to. That'd be terrific. And you form friendships like I did. You probably have too, Benjamin. The line between, and that's okay. Like, I'm not saying that's not okay. That's actually okay. Because where we meet people, that's where we form relationships. We form friendships. But within the school context, there's also a professional boundary. So, if I'm putting it down to a teacher's situation, when it comes to child protection, for example, if there's a child protection issue with that person that you go for a beer with on every Friday afternoon, you've got to put aside the personal and be professional and report that.
Mm.
There is a line, and it's really hard to keep that line. It's even harder when you move from being a teacher to leading that group of people, because at risk is the friendships that you built over the years.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you might have to say to that teacher, listen, Benjamin, I need to pull you in the line because you actually haven't done this assessment piece properly and recorded the marks, and I need it done by this time. So what are you going to do? Like, you're actually going to have some of those difficult conversations. And at risk for you then is that relationship that you built over the years.
Mm.
So, but there is a professional line.
Yeah.
You're employed to be the middle leader. There's an expectation on you to do the job. And it goes right up to principalship. Like, if you think about it, people can't stand a principal who knows that there's a problem with a staff member but never deals with it.
Yeah.
Because they're too frightened of having that difficult conversation, because they're basically deep down thinking, I won't be liked by that person. I'm going to ruin the relationship. But everyone else goes, why won't they do something about it? Like, it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that line, and it is really hard to draw that line.
Yeah, I was going to say, it would be really hard because, as you said, you've developed trust with people, and then you then have to, I noticed when I first stepped into middle leadership, you have to think differently once you're in leadership. You do have to start to train your brain to actually see through a different lens.
Yeah.
Because you have to start to think of things through the lens of risk, or you have to start to think. And I remember when I was a first middle leader, naive and sort of getting my head wrapped around things, and I would want to do things. And then good mentors would say, well, if you think about this and this, and suddenly you go, oh gosh, I didn't think of the implications.
Yeah.
And you have to train yourself to think of the implications. And then that's hard when you've got a colleague who has potentially been a friend for a long time.
Yeah.
You now have to say no to, or say, well, there's a risk involved. And it's hard because people may say, well, you've changed now that you've got leadership. And I think there is a natural change because you do have to think differently. And I think there's a fake change. You can become well, I'm a leader now, so I don't talk to you type thing. But, and that's hard to navigate because sometimes the change is necessary, and people may get upset at the change, but actually it's a necessary change because you have to think differently.
And you've got to think of it that you're still Benjamin, but you're in a position. You hold a title. Yeah. And that title is only held for a season. And the other end of it is, I'm no longer a principal. So everything that came with that title is now gone. So who am I?
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to really know who you are, and that your value as a person is in who you are and what you value, what you believe. But you hold a position. And so when you hold a position, it's not about you, Benjamin. It's about respecting that position and what that entails, that job actually entails.
Yeah.
And if you're going to fulfill that job really well professionally, you need to hold the line and fill it professionally. Still as Benjamin, bringing your own particular flavour to it. So I'm still friendly. I still have a coffee with you. I still chat with you about the football or whatever the case may be. We still could go and have a beer on a Friday night, but I've also got to be really cautious about that because, I've got to be careful because on Monday morning I might actually have to have a really hard conversation.
Yeah.
So in knowing yourself, when you step into that role, you've got to think carefully about, well, how am I going to protect myself? How am I going to step into that role? Are there things that I need to do to help me transition into that different narrative or that different position? Does it mean I move my desk over here? Does it mean I don't have beer on a Friday afternoon with the team? And if I do, what does that look like? Does it mean that I don't drink as much as I normally would because what do I share with people? Whereas, do I actually say to the team, look, I am going to start my whole journey. I am now the leader of this team. And unfortunately, that does mean that, my interactions with you is going to change, but I want you to know I'm still Ben and I care about you. But sometimes I'm going to have to call people to account. I'm going to have to make the tough decisions, and I'll do my best to do that well and professionally. But please, so is it about articulating for you what that looks like to the team so they go, okay, there is it. So it's thinking through all of those things before you step into the role rather than stepping into the role and going, perhaps I shouldn't have been their best friend. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you shouldn't have been their best friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Have
that's
to
a really,
find some You're going to have to find some friendships out of school if that's what fills your cup. If relationships are necessary and important for you, it's something you value, find good friends outside of work.
I think that's a very challenging statement you're making, because I think lots of people, in my experience, I've moved around to a few different schools. So I've sort of been overseas and then in South Australia and Queensland. So I've made good friends. But it's, sometimes you find people who've been friends for a long, long, long time in schools, and people find almost their best friends within school communities. So that's a challenging
It is.
statement that you're making, because you're suggesting that actually, we should like our colleagues and get along with our colleagues, but our friendship should be beyond that space.
That's right. And if that's a problem for you, and that's where it comes down to knowing yourself. If you've been in school for 20 years and your best friend is in the same department, and that fills your cup to the point that it's something you can't let go of, then perhaps you shouldn't step into the role of middle leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Or perhaps you should look for a middle leadership role in another school and retain that friendship because it's something you really, really value.
Yeah.
So there's some tough decisions to be made there because, as you say, you will come across differently if you are going to do that role properly.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's going to be really challenging for a lot of people to hear. So, thanks. To stay on trust, one thing I think about is in that middle leadership role.
Can I just, just another thought on that?
Yeah.
The other problem is, again, if your best friend is in your department that you're leading and you go out for beer on a Friday night with them, think about the optics of that to the rest of the team.
Mm.
So think about it from that perspective. Obviously, that person's Benjamin's favourite. So they're never going to be pulled into line, are they? Because, they've got Benjamin's ear. So they're going to, obviously, it's the optics of it too. So you've got to think about it from that situation as well.
Yeah, and that optics.
Principal of a school, it's even more challenging. It really is. And that's why they say it's a really lonely job. And it is a really lonely job because you've got to be careful of the optics and the politics and the perceptions that people have, et cetera, et cetera. So, and it does come down to trust. So segueing back into your question you were going to ask, Ben.
Yeah. So in the middle leadership, you're obviously reporting up and then leading down at times. And so you've got that sort of two-way street, which is potentially unique when you're.
Motorcycle, sorry.
No. So when you're in that unique position of the middle leadership, you're obviously trying to build trust upwards with your senior leadership. And then you're also trying to build it, that up and down phrase is not great, but it's the easiest way to do it, and build trust down in the people you lead. From your experience, what is the quickest way for someone in middle leadership to lose the trust, number one, of those above them, and then number two, of the staff room?
Can I preface it by saying middle leadership is the meat in a sandwich? I wrote an article and put it on LinkedIn. It was one of the most liked articles I've written because people acknowledge the fact that it is actually a really hard job because you are leading up and leading down. So principals still are leading up because they've got a board as well.
Yeah.
One of the worst things that you should never do, and I could not stand it as a principal, was if a middle leader would say, we all need to do this because Paul said to. Paul has said this. And it used to drive me nuts because I think, what you're doing there is you're actually deflecting the responsibility. And you're saying if something goes wrong with this, it's not my fault. You're saying, I don't believe in the direction the school's going in. So, but I've got to support it anyway. And I'm sorry, don't hate on me. Hate on him. He's the idiot who did it, not me. So towing the party line, as terrible as that sounds, it's really important. So if something has been handed down from your senior leadership that you need to implement, because essentially that's where the rubber hits the road. The middle leaders are the gatekeepers for change. They can resist that change or they can allow it to happen. And principals, really, they want people to implement their strategic plan. But got to empower. They've got work to do to empower the middle leaders as well to do it. But when a middle leader gets a directive, if you don't believe it's going to work, then that's the point to go to the principal and professionally say, look, there's going to be problems with this, or I can see a better way of doing that. If if it's safe to do that, I'll sit with that. But when you actually share it with the team, it's got to be shared with you believe in it. Yeah, this is where we're heading, and this is why. I'm not shifting the blame. I'm part of the team. So this is where we're going, and that builds trust with the people above you.
Yeah,
in a sense, it will build trust also with the people below you, particularly if you go in with that conviction that it is the right direction. Because if you disagree with it, you actually went and had it out.
Yes.
But you're obviously not going to reveal that. I disagree with this decision, so I fixed it for you. So you're not going to say that. But at the end of the day, and it sounds terrible, it sounds trite, but the job of a deputy is to make the principal look good. And if it works beautifully, then the principal should be good. All alike.
Okay. So I've heard this phrase mentioned a couple of times, and I personally don't think it's true, but I just wanted to hear your take on it anyway. I've heard some people say, that middle leadership, you kind of have to pick your allegiance because you can't have the trust of both the staff room and senior leadership. So you've got to pick whose side you're on, kind of. And I've struggled with that because I've gone, I feel like that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
But that's been some people's experience and what they've said. What do you think about that?
I agree with you, Benjamin. And I think a lot of middle leaders do go in with that attitude. You've got to pick a side. And as soon as you do that, what you're saying is there are two sides in the school.
Yeah.
There are two camps. So the school is not united. It's not one school. And that's a big problem for the principal, particularly if the principal has got a vision and a strategic plan, is wanting the school to go in this direction. It's not going to go in that direction if half the team is not on the team.
Yes.
Yeah. You use a football analogy, for example. If half the team is not heading in the same direction or got on board with the same tactic or strategy that they've come up with pre-game, then they're going to lose the game. So you shouldn't be picking your sides. It shouldn't be about that. It's about you being in a position. So you have a responsibility in that position to the school, not necessarily to the principal, but I'd say to the school. So responsibility is two-way. As I said, if you disagree with something that the senior leaders have said and asked you to implement, then there should be enough trust and safety, psychological safety, for you to go and have a conversation with them and just say, look, can I just raise this issue? Can I talk about this? Can we talk this through? Had you thought about it from this direction? Because I can see, and if there is that trust there, then they should listen to you. They should give you an ear. Then once that's sorted out, then you can go to the team and lead the team. It's not about you being on the side of your team and defending them. But in that situation, you might need to take the voice of your team to the senior leaders. If I want the same team, I want the same outcome. We're all heading this direction, but you need to know there's a bit of dissent in this area here. And I'm sharing that with you strategically to help you understand and help you massage the decision or help you make a better decision. So it's about that two-way street with the communication too. But it's not about picking sides.
And I agree with you because I don't think it should be a sides thing, because I think as you said, if it's a sides thing, there's clearly a lack of trust. If you've got a school where there is sides thing, then as you pointed out, there's no trust between leadership and the staff room, which means you're not going to get good outcomes because teachers will not want to follow what the leaders say. And that's obviously unfortunate for any school. You talked about that bringing to senior leadership and say, hey, look, there's dissent in this area. How do you have that conversation in a way that protects even the people that are bringing the dissent? Because they may be in good faith saying, I'm frustrated. They're not having an unprofessional whinge, if we want to call it that, but they're bringing concerns. How do you bring that to senior leadership in a way where you don't feel like you're putting those people on the spotlight?
Yeah.
Does that am I asking that well? I don't know if I'm asking that well.
No, you're asking that well enough, Benjamin. And it does come down to the whole notion of trust. And that's why, as I keep making the point, it is so important for the principal to build a culture of trust.
Yeah.
Because the team is not going to be all working together to achieve a goal unless there is that culture of trust. People are not going to raise issues and sort out problems or help, achieve greatness unless people trust each other and consequently feel safe to raise those issues.
Yeah.
So if there's a culture of mistrust, there's no way as a middle leader you're going to go and sit to the principal and say, there's a problem here because, you'd be frightened for your job. So there's a bit of wisdom there that's necessary and a bit of wisdom in terms of the timing and how you raise an issue because you know the principal, you know how best to actually raise that issue with him or her. You've thought about it carefully and shrewdly as well. And of course, as you pointed out, you're not bringing to them just car park gossip or wisdom. Car park gossip, sorry, not with, should have said wisdom. You're not bringing them to car park gossip. You're actually bringing them to them a genuine issue with a solution. You're not bringing them a gripe. You're bringing them a gripe and a solution. So that's important. So it's building a relationship with the principal. So leaders should be building that relationship with the principal, getting to know them, and that's going to take a bit of effort on your side. Particularly if the principal's not very good at getting out of their office. It's, hey, whoever your principal's name is, I'd love to have a coffee once a month with you, if that's great. Or can I catch up with you to talk about this? And it's that building that rapport, that relationship. So then you do feel safe and know when to raise an issue. And then it's raising it honestly and professionally. You know that strategic goal that we're wanting to implement, and I had to think about that. I've chatted to my team, and overall the team has said this. So you're not identifying an individual person. The team, we've discussed it, because obviously you raised it at the start meeting last week and there was conversation in the staff room and they've got some real concerns about this. Could you please address them? Or could you help me address them? So, you're not sort of pointing the finger and blaming the principal. Could you please address them? Could you help me address them? Or I could see a solution here. This is something that we could look at actually perhaps that will help resolve that issue.
I think that's great advice for someone who's, especially if you're new into leadership, you're just stepping into middle leadership and you've got ideas and you want to do things. That I think there's a natural intimidation factor of now going, especially maybe if it's a bigger organization. If it's a small school, you probably know the principal very well, maybe no matter your level. But if it's a larger organization, maybe you haven't spent as much time with them. So to then step into a leadership role, it may feel intimidating to go and say, hey, can I pitch you something or can I tell you a concern? So I think for young leaders, whether, and I mean that more in young leaders as in being a leader, not in age, but in, you've only just stepped into middle leadership, no matter where you are in your career, that can still be an intimidating thing. So building a relationship with your principal, you would say, is key. And with senior leadership in general, I would assume as well, is building a solid relationship with them so that you can then bring something to them.
And just keep this nugget in the back of your mind. It's a bit like the story about the king who bought new clothes. New clothes. Really cracking principals are the ones who have humility and vulnerability. So people who are really, really good at their job will spend time listening to people. They're the ones building that culture of trust. And so you'll feel naturally safe and inclined to actually go and talk to them and share those issues. If you're feeling intimidated by the principal, it's probably because they put this false facade on them and they're really hopeless underneath. And they're having to actually put this front on to say, hey, I'm really good. I know what I'm doing. And underneath, they're a quivering mess and they have no idea what they're doing. They're faking it till they make it. So the emperor's new clothes. So if you don't need to be intimidated. You just think, actually, hang on. This principal's coming across as they know everything. They obviously don't. So how can I actually appeal to them that appeals to their ego, but how can I couch this in a way that actually is going to help the school? Not help me, but help the school.
Okay, interesting.
And ultimately make them look better.
As you said, that's the goal, isn't it, of leadership? I think sometimes you can find people who want to fight every cause. And every cause is a cause to go to the mat with leadership on. And sometimes you go, is it really that? Like to go to this extent over that thing. How do you in the middle, when you're sitting in that middle, go, what is worth going to the mat for and fighting for this thing, and what is something that actually you just got to let go because you're not the decision maker, you're not the person at the top, you are in an organization, and just go, actually, you know what, there's enough of the things that I'm not aligning with here, so I'm not going to fight it because maybe, I'll just look elsewhere.
Yeah.
Is that, because
you're answering your own question, Benjamin, with wisdom, because it's picking your battles, isn't it? And the question is, what can you live with, and what can you put aside, and what can you what do you need to tackle first? And I'd say it's what do you need to tackle first? So prioritizing those things. So if there's a whole bunch of problems that you can see, you can't tackle all of them. That's why I said earlier on in our conversation, identify one problem that's the most pressing problem for you and go to the principal with a solution for that problem. And then once you've solved that one, then go to the next one on the list. So you can't solve everything. And if you come across to the principal, there's all these problems when you go and speak to them. They're just going to think you're a blinking whinger. Like, seriously, good about this place? Like, and it's about making things better. So, and it comes back to that motivation. Why are you wanting to do that?
Yeah.
And who are you as a person?
Yeah, you got to make that judgment call, don't you?
Exactly. But the bus duty roster, I'm sorry, bad luck. You're on at 4:10. That's it. I'm only with that.
So how do you do the opposite? For instance, like you're a middle leader and you're running a team, and there's that person on your team who always does seem to have a gripe or does believe that everything's an injustice potentially. And you go, that's not an injustice. That's part of working in a school. Like, for instance, the bus duty at 4:10 kind of thing. Like we all at times within our professional have to do these things within an organization. How do you as a middle leader manage that person? Because that's a skill you're going to have to learn as a middle leader. I know you're talking about leadership and trust and those sorts of things, but you do have to at times manage people who are adversarial for whatever reason.
Can I be really with the same kind of terrible? I avoided them. That's an awful thing to say. That is terrible. Right. But my point there is, you will always, on every team, there'll be, no matter the size of the team, there'll always be a negative Nelly. Always someone who loves to whinge. And that's just who they are. But if you give them airtime, they'll suck the life out of you, the energy out of you. And no matter how much you do to make things better for them, there'll always be something else that they're going to whinge about. And if you allow them to control the narrative, then you ignore all those great people that just want to get on with the job or achieve great things. So don't put your energy into those negative Nellies. Obviously, from time to time, you're going to have to lend them a sympathetic ear. But it's a sympathetic ear. And most of the time, at the end of the conversation, you might say to them, and this is the skill of listening or keeping confidences that builds trust, is, you've shared this with me. Do you want me to do something about this, or did you just want to share with me to get it off your chest?
Okay.
Times out of 10, the person go, I feel better now. Thanks for listening. Right. See you later. So yes, sometimes you can't avoid them, and you shouldn't avoid them. But my initial point was I avoided them because I didn't want those people just to constantly suck the energy and life out of what we were trying to achieve, because the 90% of people were on board and this is where we go. And if one person doesn't want to come on the journey, well, that's your choice. You've got a decision in that to make.
It's a principle.
You still can strategically use those people. Like if you do have a complex or difficult problem, sometimes one of the best strategies is to take it to the biggest negative person. Tell me the problems with this that I can't see because I'm too blinkered and blindsided. So everyone has something to offer.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice. Yeah. To shift gears a little bit, teaching is, I think, an emotional career, because I think majority of us go into it because we care about young people. And then we get confronted with sometimes the awful things that young people are going through in their lives. They're battling depression, they're battling families, and I think at times, I don't know, mate, it sounds like you're the same. I take on that emotional load sometimes of caring about kids and come home and be like, what an awful day and what an awful thing that young person's carrying. When you step into middle leadership, again, you can carry an emotional weight of things. How do you as a middle leader protect yourself to be able to do that job well and still give of yourself, but not let that burn you out. From what I've been looking in and researching into, we're seeing that teachers are leaving the profession in droves because of weight of, policies and workload and student behavior, all the different things that statistics are showing us. But middle leaders are also not surviving in middle leadership because of the emotional weight that they carry. And I remember when I first had my daughter, my wife said, "You're going to have to leave it at the door. You can no longer bring it home." So I had to I did this thing where before I got home, before I went to the door, I'd take a big physical deep breath in and out to try and shed it, but you still carry it. So what would be some advice to middle leaders of how to protect the emotional well-being of themselves? Because it's such an important job within schools. And my passion, part of doing this podcast, is because I want middle leaders to thrive, whether they want to go higher or they want to stay in middle leadership. We need good middle leaders so that schools can be good, so that children can get good outcomes. How do middle leaders protect themselves in that space?
Yeah. And again, very good question, because it's such an important question to consider for all leaders.
Mm.
And my first point I make there is you cannot care for others unless you first of all care for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that lesson the hard way, sadly, a few years ago with a significant mental health issue. And I had to confront my demons and work through that. Now, I would not have had to deal with that issue if I was wise enough to care for myself and listen to my wife. So caring for yourself is so important, because you're right. In education, it's about relationships, and it's been invited into the lives of young people and families. And all of us, the teacher in the classroom through the principal, are dealing with the messiness of life. And it can get to you because you do carry it, because you do care. So I say to principals now, my advice to you is to find a supervisor, because regardless whether you like it or not, you should find someone that you can debrief with regularly. So if you've dealt with a critical incident or a real issue, you need to debrief with somebody. And that might be your wife. It might be a professional, somebody else. But you need to debrief and process what's just happened so you can allow yourself to let it go and park it. The next bit of advice I would say is, keep yourself fit and healthy, eat well, exercise, have hobbies outside of school, friendships outside of school, set boundaries, because teaching, counselling, how long is a piece of string? We could work 24 hours a day if we wanted to and still not do the job to our satisfaction.
Yeah.
In actual fact, we're only paid for 8 hours a day. We all know that we do a lot more than 8 hours a day, at least 10 hours a day. But you set yourself some boundaries. When are you going to start work? When are you going to finish work? And that's particularly important when you've got a young family. And then the other thing is, routines or rituals. So one of the things I did, Benjamin, you get to the front door, you breathe a great big deep breath. What I would do when I walked into the front door is I'd say, "Afternoon, everyone, I'm home." And then I go straight to the bedroom and take off my suit, my work clothes, put on my shorts and t-shirt. And I would take off my watch. I would never wear a watch when I wasn't working. So I don't have one on at the moment.
Yeah.
I consider this work.
Yeah.
So I would never wear a watch when I wasn't working. And mentally that said to me, I'm now turning up as husband and as father. I'm not turning up with my hat on of being a headmaster or a principal.
Yeah.
I've shedded that persona and put it in the cupboard. And now I'm turning up as your dad.
Yeah.
Here I am.
That's really cool. Yeah. Sometimes it is something as simple as a physical representation of, a snake shedding its skin, in a sense. Like I'm taking something off and putting it over there and changing the roles. Because it goes back to what you said earlier about sometimes the difficulty of middle leadership is separating the professional from the person. We could do the same things in our private lives with our families. We can carry those two things intermixed. But, if I'm dealing with something difficult at school, my wife and child don't need me being that on a Saturday at the beach. They need me to just be, especially again, people have different family experiences, whatever their social lives are like outside of school. The people that they're around deserve to have you, and not the person dealing with that really heavy, stressful thing.
And it comes down to then as well, back to my comment about understanding who you are. What do you value most? I mean, most people will say, I value my family. I really value my kids and I value the relationship with my wife. But their actions don't say that. because they're on their phone all weekend. They're answering the emails. They're still wearing their work clothes. They're still thinking about that problem they've got to solve on Monday. They're not actually present. So what does that say to the kids that you've got? I don't value you as much as I value my job.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's a confronting thing to think about it.
Yeah.
You say you value this, but your actions say something else. So I'll leave that with you to think about.
Yeah. I think this is going to be one of the most confronting episodes I've done with some of your advice, Paul, but
I do have a terrible tendency to say how it is, but you know,
no, it's good.
but in a way that hopefully is edifying and supportive and encouraging. So.
Oh, absolutely. At the same time, I think also if you want to develop as a leader, you got to hear the hard truths at times. And I think that, it's even about ourselves personally. I've shared in previous podcasts, some of the best advice I got was really hard to hear. And I had to sit back and really, really dwell on it. So no, it's good. It's confronting, but it's good advice, because I think we've got to ask ourselves these questions. If we want to be good at our jobs and good with our families and good with our friends, whatever that looks like, which I believe all people probably do deep down. They want to be good at those three areas in their life. You got to ask yourself these questions, because it's not just going to happen naturally. You're not going to be able to just navigate all of that very easily just because, you're going to have to set boundaries. And like with anything in life, routines, boundaries, good strategies, you don't just go to the gym. You have to make time, for instance, as another sort of analogy in that space. So yeah, no, I appreciate it.
And I had a great wife. Like, she was fantastic. So if you've got a partner, they can be a great person for you.
Yeah.
By saying, and I always knew when I was slipping into a dangerous territory when she would say to me, Paul, your kids don't know who you are, or they haven't seen you. Oh, Paul, yes, you're right. She was very good at calling me to task when I was blurring that boundary or wasn't spending enough time being a husband or a father. So would suddenly ring loudly in my ear.
Yes, you need someone outside of the organization that knows you, who can be truthful. Whoever it might be, a friend, an uncle, auntie, parent, whoever it might be, spouse, who can actually just say to you, hey, where's your head at, in a way? Because we're seeing not you. You know?
And for middle leaders, find a good mentor, or anybody at leadership, find a good mentor. Probably outside the organisation. And again, you'll find that ex-principals are really generous. If you reach out to people who have recently retired from middle leadership positions, principalship, can you mentor me? You'll find that people are really generous. They are.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I've thought about in the past, is also I've been lucky enough to be often mentored by the principal that I'm working with. They've been very generous with their time. I've always sort of operated from a bit of an, to use a biblical phrase, ask, seek, knock policy. If you don't ask, how are you going to, you're never going to know. So I often just go and ask. I always just ask the question, do you mind offering me some advice? Do you mind just telling me some things? And
what's the worst can happen? They can just say no.
They just say no because they're too busy, and that's okay. But I've found I've had some really great principals. Two of those headmasters that I've had, my first two guests, they spent a lot of time just speaking into me, which was really helpful. But then, as you said, sometimes outside of your organization is also a really good thing, because sometimes you want to wrestle with things and there's no conflict maybe of interest on the table. Would you suggest that retired principals are better than acting principals, do you think?
Either or. Acting principals have less time.
Yeah.
You've got to be shrewd and wise in who you ask. Be your mentor. But people who've had good experience and a wise counsel, you will know, because once you meet them and have a conversation with them or a coffee with them, you'll know whether you click and gel with that person. And good mentor relationships are about that. Do you gel with that person? Do you share similar values? Is that person going to give you some good feedback that you might not want to hear? That sort of thing. So it's choosing a mentor that is going to help you with that. Current principals are time poor, but again, it's interesting. One of the trust building practices that my research uncovered was coaching and mentoring. But great principals invest in their staff personally. So you've obviously been lucky to have a great principal that you've worked under who's given you the time because that person, she has known that my job is to grow the next generation of leaders. So they can take my job. And so I have a responsibility to grow people
Yeah.
because it's about our kids, and our kids deserve great leadership and great education.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so well, we're nearing the end of our time together, and as you've been a very amazing guest today, I just wanted to finish with one sort of question that, again, I will finish most episodes with, which is, if, you've given us a lot of advice this episode, and hopefully people that listen to this take a lot away with them to think about. What would be one final piece of advice that you would give to someone right now who's in a middle leadership role or is aspiring to be a middle leader that they could take away with them and kind of maybe implement immediately?
When you say I've given lots of advice, I sound like I've been arrogant, don't I? That I've
No,
actually...
not at all. No. This is the purpose of the podcast. It's you telling your stories and giving us your wisdom.
My God, because at the end of the day, I'm still practicing. And I find myself now, I'm not in a leadership position like a headmaster. I'm actually spending time and looking at myself backwards and going, I needed to get better at this. I should be better at that. And I'm still evaluating and reflecting myself.
Yeah.
So, which I think is a really powerful thing. So a lot of people aren't very good at reflecting. So if it was a good bit of advice, I'd say spend a lot of time reflecting. And to help you reflect, you might read a lot. You might watch other leaders and think about how they make you feel. Or you might ask colleagues to give you feedback and help you reflect as well. So always grow. Don't ever think you've made it. So I don't think I've made it. If I went back into the role of principal and had my time again, there's quite a bit that I would do differently. If I had my time again with issues that I face with individual people, I would handle them differently now. So it's, we always should continue to grow.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, thank you. That's a really great piece of advice. And thank you so much for your time again, Paul. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you. And as I said, a really good points to take home and to think about and mull over for all of us as leaders and aspiring leaders, because it's a difficult journey, leadership, and your wisdom is much appreciated.
Oh, thank you. It's been a great conversation. Really enjoyed it, Benjamin.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.